There were huddles where I wasn't even thinking about the next play. All I could think about was getting high after the final whistle. On the gridiron, Lawrence Taylor was a nightmare for every opponent. Yet, the icon was battling a private demon, crafting a legacy so chaotic and destructive it defies belief. LT's unraveling wasn't sudden. The seeds were sown years before the news broke. His addiction almost stripped him of his career. He didn't just enter the NFL, he detonated on impact. Taken as the second pick in 1981 by the New York Giants, he arrived like a hurricane, snagging both Defensive Rookie of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year in his debut season. No one had ever redefined the outside linebacker position like he did. He attacked from blind spots, coordinators couldn't diagram. His tackles were so brutal they made hardened professionals question their life's work. He wasn't merely a star. He was an evolutionary leap in football talent. But the game tapes only tell half the story. That same wild, ferocious power that made him a monster on the field was wreaking havoc in his life off it right from the moment he became a Giant. On the night he was drafted, he slammed 41 beers. 41. He passed out cold before his name was even called by the Giants. That's how the Lawrence Taylor saga began. No family party, no celebratory meal, just 41 beers leading to a total blackout. If that doesn't foreshadow the chaos to come, I don't know what does. The number 2 pick in the draft, and he spent the night downing 41 beers. He admitted to doing lines before taking the field, figuring he was only playing at 75% capacity, and yet he remained one of the most feared linebackers the league has ever known. Let that sink in for a moment. He was operating at what he believed was 3/4 of his full potential, all while actively using, and even then he was the league's top defender. That's not something to boast about. It's a catastrophe masquerading as greatness. His first encounter with the drug happened at a party his rookie season, back in 1981. Within a couple of years, what started as a casual indulgence had spiraled into a serious, consistent dependency. During the 1985 season, he was getting high up to 3 times every single week. To cheat the NFL's drug tests, he kept a bottle of aspirin stuffed with clean urine from his teammates, making a quick switch in the restroom before he had to provide a sample. The scheme was foolproof, until the day one of his donors popped hot on a test himself, bringing the entire charade crashing down around him. To beat the league's drug screening, Taylor confessed that his own teammates were supplying him with their urine. The irony is, he finally got caught because the clean sample he used was actually dirty. Consider the sheer logistics of that deception. This wasn't someone accidentally falling into a habit. He was orchestrating a complex cover-up to fuel his addiction, all while earning All-Pro selections. It was the same brilliance he used on the football field, applied now to staying high. In February of 1986, following that season, his wife found him using and forced him into a rehab center in Houston. He did a short stint, then checked himself out, trading one addiction for another by throwing himself into golf. That fix didn't hold. In 1987, he officially failed his first league drug test and, under the lenient policy of the time, got a simple warning. Strike 1. He didn't stop. Then came August of 1988. Taylor popped positive again. This time, Commissioner Pete Rozelle hit him with a 30-day suspension, forcing him to sit out the first 4 games of the season. This wasn't just a penalty, it was a final warning. Back then, the league's rules were clear. A 3rd failed test meant a year-long ban from the game. For a player already in his 30s, a ban that long was a career death sentence. After his 2nd failed test in 1988, he was sidelined for 4 games. Strike 3, and he was out of football forever. Lawrence Taylor knew precisely what was on the line, so he quit. It wasn't about getting sober or finding redemption. It was because his career was the one thing he valued more than the high. At least, not yet. He managed to stay sober from 1988 all the way to 1993. During that time, he returned to form, clinching another Super Bowl ring with the Giants in the 1990 season, and hung up his cleats in 1993, widely considered the most dominant defensive force in the history of the sport. The moment his career ended, so did his self-control. The day after his retirement party, Taylor was using again. Not a few weeks down the road, not a few months. The very next day. Later that year, word got out that he was getting high on the same day the Giants were retiring his jersey. That's the part that really stings. The entire organization was there to celebrate him, and he was off somewhere else, lost in his addiction. After football, his habit escalated. He said it seized control of his world in a way the other stuff never did when he was playing. With no NFL regimen, no threat of being banned, and no game day schedule to keep him anchored, he was finally untethered, and that very freedom was dismantling him piece by piece. In November of 2003, while promoting his tell-all book, LT Over the Edge, Taylor gave an interview to Mike Wallace on 60 Minutes that left audiences stunned. Wallace quoted from the book, "You write, I'd go through an ounce a day. There were moments I'm in the huddle and I'm not thinking about our defensive scheme. I'm thinking about hitting the pipe as soon as the game's over." He confessed it right there, in the heat of an NFL game, surrounded by his team, with a stadium full of people and a national television audience watching. His focus was on his next fix. But see, you have to get this, it never touched my game. He said it with total conviction, and his stats prove it. That's the part that's so hard to wrap your head around. His addiction and his legendary career ran on parallel tracks, two forces of nature that never interfered with each other. Then the career was over, and only the addiction was left. By the mid-1990s, Taylor was burning through thousands of dollars daily on his vices. He painted a picture of his own home as a glorified den, with a revolving door of people and carpets scorched by dropped pipes. He wasn't just using, he was submerged in its world. Then, in May of 1996, Taylor walked right into a reverse drug sting in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and was arrested. He was in town for a celebrity golf tournament. It was always the golf tournaments when he allegedly hit up an undercover cop to buy $100 worth of crack cocaine. In the end, he was just one of 15 people swept up in the sting. He had $5,000 on him, in cash. He posted bond and walked. Ultimately, he dodged jail time with a pretrial intervention program that handed him 60 hours of community service and some counseling. Then the calendar flipped to October 19th, 1998. Around 2 a.m. at the Sandpiper Resort in St. Petersburg Beach, Florida. It all came crashing down again. And where was he? At another celebrity golf event. This time, the street. Pete Beach Special Response Team breached his room moments after he allegedly purchased 3 rocks of crack for $50 from an undercover agent. Inside, the officers discovered crack cocaine, pipes, and drug paraphernalia scattered everywhere. Taylor put up $15,500 for bail and immediately started screaming that he'd been set up, insisting the officer had been hounding him all day and only came to his room late after he'd already refused him multiple times. He pleaded no contest, which got him 18 months of probation. But the image itself, a first-ballot Hall of Famer getting raided in his hotel room at 2 a.m. during a golf outing, told you everything you needed to know about the wreckage his life had become. The man once considered the most terrifying player in the entire NFL was now scoring $50 bags of crack in the darkest hours of the night. The 60 Minutes interview was the moment the world got a glimpse into the abyss, a look at just how total his collapse had been. With retirement on the horizon, Taylor described crack as the one and only bright spot he could see in his future. He wasn't looking forward to leaving football because he was tired of the game, but because he was desperate to get high without any limits. That's the line that sticks with you, the one you can't shake. He said he was looking forward to returning to cocaine. "I saw coke as the only bright spot in my future." A legend. A Hall of Famer. A man who redefined his position, who did things on a football field no one had ever seen before. And he was just counting the minutes until he could smoke crack whenever he wanted. That isn't a cautionary tale. That is an absolute tragedy, and it was far from over. LT's addiction to crack didn't just wreck him, it demolished his marriage and his finances. The crack cocaine didn't just corrode Lawrence Taylor's health. It burned a hole straight through his marriage, his bank account, and his dignity, before finally plunging him into a scandal so toxic that it permanently twisted how the world perceived him. Taylor's first marriage was to Linda Cooley, and by the time he hung up his cleats in 1993, the relationship was already in ruins. For years, his cocaine use had been a festering open wound in their marriage. It led to sleepless nights, terrifying bursts of erratic behavior, and moments so grim that Linda reportedly had to physically drag him out of a crack house at one point while he was still playing. But when the game was over and that last guardrail in his life disappeared, what little was left of the marriage went up in flames with it. In the years after retirement, Taylor described his own home as being almost like a crack house. Not a place where drugs were sold, but a sanctuary where they were consumed in staggering amounts, surrounded by people who had no business being in his life. Prostitutes, fellow addicts, and complete strangers were a constant, revolving door of chaos at all hours. He estimates he was torching thousands of dollars a day on crack and women, chasing a high with the same relentless fury he once used to chase quarterbacks. He spoke of drug addicts curled up in a ball in the corner, of burned rugs from dropped pipes. I got him really bad. I mean, my place was almost like a crack house. And then he hit rock bottom. Not quietly, but in a very public implosion. In 1996, his wife filed for divorce. That same year, he was busted in Myrtle Beach trying to buy crack. After the arrest, a friend said he found Taylor on his couch, curled into a fetal position, clutching a pillow and sobbing. After your arrest, a friend said, and I quoted this, "You were lying on the couch in a fetal position, hugging a pillow and crying." "Oh, I doubt the crying part," he replied, "but I might have been." When Mike Wallace pressed him on what stung the most, Taylor didn't mention the arrest, the public shame, or even the financial ruin. The publicity and your kids. How many kids you got? Man, that was the worst thing. How many kids? I have, 4. 4 children forced to watch their father come apart at the seams in real time. That was the weight that crushed him. And you saw it, just for a moment, in how he tried to pull himself together after that 1996 arrest. For more than a year, he stayed clean. He lived quietly, playing golf and watching television. And I'm just sitting there in my house by myself, and it got old. I got old, and it got old. I went to a party, things happened, the silence was eating him alive, and that single chilling sentence, "I went to a party, things happened," was his gloss for a relapse that dragged on from the fall of 1997 through almost the entire year of 1998. A solid year of drugs, degradation, and daily self-destruction. Daily. For a year. His finances were imploding right alongside him. At the height of his habit, Taylor estimated he was burning through more than $1,000 a day on crack alone. That number doesn't even account for the escorts, the hangers-on he was bankrolling, or the legal fees that were starting to become a mountain. And on top of the drug spending, he was disastrously behind on child support. So far behind that, in May of 1998, he was arrested and spent about 12 hours in a cell before a friend paid the roughly $4,429 in back support to spring him. A year earlier, in 1997, he had pleaded guilty to filing a fraudulent 1990 income tax return, admitting he had underreported income from his sports pub by $48,000. In November of 1998, mere days after his Florida crack arrest, and while in another rehab program, Taylor filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. His listed debts totaled approximately $350,000. This was the man who had been one of the most lionized athletes in America, a 2-time Super Bowl champion, a Hall of Famer, a man whose name alone had been a gold mine used to sell everything from sneakers to television contracts. And now he was filing for bankruptcy while trying to kick a crack addiction. That isn't a footnote in a career. That is utter devastation. Another chapter opened around 2001 with his marriage to Marissa Cruz, but that door closed in 2006, followed by a new one with Lynette in 2007. But marriage didn't fix the chaos in his finances or his life. All of it was nothing compared to the storm that was about to break in May of 2010. May 6th, 2010. A Holiday Inn in Suffern, New York. That's where they found him. That's where they arrested him. Lawrence Taylor was 51 years old. The call came in before dawn. A 16-year-old girl, a runaway, had been reported missing by her uncle, setting everything in motion. Her story was a nightmare. A pimp named Rashid Davis had brutalized her, forcing her into the life. He was the one who drove her to that hotel, leaving her in Taylor's room while he stood guard outside. The price was $300. He paid for sex. After the cuffs went on, he didn't deny it to investigators. The charges were a laundry list of disgrace: third-degree rape, patronizing a prostitute, endangering a child's welfare, and criminal sexual conduct. A felony conviction meant staring down the barrel of up to 4 years behind bars. The fallout was instant, a tidal wave of public shock. ESPN, CNN, the New York Times. A Hall of Fame legend was accused of raping a minor, and the line the sports world had carefully drawn between Taylor the player and Taylor the man was instantly erased. This wasn't about drugs or taxes, this was about a child. In the weeks that followed, Taylor's defense began to crumble. His lawyer's first claim was no sexual contact, but that story quickly changed. By January of 2011, Taylor copped a plea to misdemeanor offenses: sexual misconduct and patronizing a prostitute. The felony rape accusation was taken off the table. In the courtroom, he said it plainly. "She told me she was 19. I now know she was legally incapable of consent. The punishment was 6 years on probation, with no time spent in a jail cell." He was also ordered to register as a level 1 sex offender, a status considered low risk, but one that would be permanent. In interviews after the sentencing, Taylor hardly sounded remorseful. He remarked to Fox News, "I didn't pick her up on a playground." He characterized prostitution as a world where you simply never knew what you were getting into. The real penalty, he claimed, was the disgrace he brought upon his wife, not the registry, the probation, or the damning headlines. The blow to his public image was permanent. Whatever shred of goodwill the football community had left for Lawrence Taylor, whatever reverence for his 2 Super Bowl rings, his 10 Pro Bowl selections, and his Hall of Fame bust, took a hit from which it has never fully recovered. The man once called the greatest defensive force in NFL history was now on a sex offender registry. No amount of legacy management could ever undo that fact. But even in the total wreckage of his reputation, Lawrence Taylor wasn't done. The next part of his story is the one almost everyone forgets. It all started with a 2-month stay at a New Jersey treatment facility that, for the first time in his life, actually worked. This was LT's long journey toward recovery and redemption. In late 1998, Lawrence Taylor walked into a drug rehab for the last time. And this time, the stakes were entirely different. He was staring down actual prison time if he didn't finally straighten out. The 1998 crack cocaine arrest in Florida came with an unambiguous message from the prosecutors. The days of pretrial leniency were over. The intervention programs were off the table. The chances for community service and counseling were gone. He was going to serve hard time if he didn't genuinely, fully commit to getting clean. He was left with 2 options: either embrace rehab for real or prepare for years behind bars. Yes, true. You're going to have to do something now because you could actually go do some time. You know, and they made it clear that they was going to lock me up. That clarity, as harsh as it was, probably saved his life. I finally got it. I actually wanted to work the program, make it work. He spent 2 months inside that New Jersey rehab. When he emerged in 1999, he declared he was sober, and this time it seemed to stick. That very same year, the football world welcomed him into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. At the induction, his son TJ, then 17 years old, gave his introduction. "I love my father. I'd do anything for him just as well as he would anything for me or my sisters, Whitney, Tanisha, Paula." That single moment, in front of everyone who mattered in football, completely broke Lawrence Taylor. The monster who had terrorized quarterbacks for 13 seasons couldn't keep himself together when his son spoke of him with love. "Lawrence, sit down just for this last part, please." He later thought about his children's loyalty during the interview, giving them credit for sticking with him when they had every reason to leave. "My kids, I thank God for them. I've come a long way, and you know what? So easy for for them that my friends and those words landed with more force than any hit he ever delivered. My kids just let me go by the wayside, but they was their stupid stuff." The journey to recovery was never a straight line. Taylor himself had called his earlier rehab attempts nothing more than a place to hide out until the trouble died down. He went into rehab in 1986 and lasted only a week. He tried twice in 1995 and was using again soon after. He went in 1987 after his first positive drug test. Each time was a door he walked through only to walk right back out, until 1998, when the door finally locked behind him. In November 2014, Taylor appeared at Forever Recovery, a treatment center in Battle Creek, Michigan, for a conversation with its founder, Per Wickstrom. What he said that day was more nakedly honest than anything from his book or his 60 Minutes special. He talked about what those early rehab programs really felt like from his perspective. Drugs, alcohol, all of it. It gets you to a point where you are no longer in control. The drug is in control. He admitted that for years, rehab was just a performance, a tactic he used to manage consequences, not to actually change who he was. The change happened the moment he stopped fighting his own losing battle and finally admitted his way was a dead end. The strength to beat drugs was always there, buried deep inside him. It just took rehab to pull it out. He also credited the community of addicts fighting alongside him. His real power didn't come from willpower, or fame, or the discipline of football. It came from the other broken people in that room. The one thing that worked, Taylor said, when absolutely nothing else did, were those people in that circle waging the same war. Getting sober isn't the end of your life. It's actually a pretty damn good one. This from a man who once claimed cocaine was the only light in his future. Those 12 words tell the story of one of the most stunning comebacks in the history of sports. In the last few years, Taylor has been active and present in ways that would have been unthinkable in the depths of his addiction. He set up a life in Pembroke Pines, Florida, hitting the golf course on the regular, still swinging clubs and celebrity games next to Hall of Famers like Marcus Allen and Emmitt Smith, and has poured himself into his family and community. In 2020, he teamed up with his daughter Tanisha to launch the Lawrence Taylor Family Foundation. The organization zeroes in on at-risk youth and their families, handing out meals, offering tutoring, teaching life skills, and running community get-togethers, like toy giveaways for the holidays. Tanisha says her goal isn't just to help kids in a vacuum, but to build whole, healthy families. And she has become the absolute powerhouse making it all happen. So, we're trying to build well-rounded families. You want to know why? Because I grew up in a broken one. The weight of that confession needs no explanation. When a podcast host recently asked him to finish the sentence, Lawrence Taylor wouldn't be here today without... He didn't even pause. I wouldn't be here today without my daughter Tanisha, period. In 2025, President Donald Trump named Taylor to the re-established President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, with golfer Bryson DeChambeau serving as the chairman. Taylor showed up at the White House for the signing, and when someone asked what exactly his job would be, he kept it simple: I'm here to serve. The appointment stirred controversy, considering his 2010 conviction and his registration as a sex offender, but Taylor walked into that room, took his seat, and owned his place there without a hint of apology. Also in 2025, Taylor walked back into the New York Giants training facility, this time to talk to the defense. He had a blunt message for the rookie Abdul Carter, the kind of truth that can only be delivered by a man who has crawled through the hell that Taylor has. Wake the hell up, don't fail your brothers over stupid stuff. On a recent podcast, when asked if all the wild nights held him back, Taylor looked at his past with chilling clarity. I look back at it all now, and I tell myself, I just say, look where you are now. Look at what you've actually managed to do. Could you have done it better? This is the Lawrence Taylor of 2025. He isn't pretending the past is a ghost. He's staring it right in the eyes and asking, given the whole damn story, all of it, could I have done more? Perhaps. But this is the man who stood in NFL huddles thinking about his next rock of crack, the man who declared bankruptcy, the man who got hauled out of hotel rooms at 2 o'clock in the morning, the man who had to register as a sex offender. That very same man now runs a family foundation, serves as a mentor to young athletes, and accepts a position on a presidential fitness council. The tragedy of Lawrence Taylor is undeniable, but so is his redemption. You don't get one without the other. And that story is a glorious, complicated mess. That's all we have for today. Thanks for tuning in. For more clips like this, go ahead and click the card on the screen.